Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about ear infections in dogs. So this is a pretty common problem, especially with floppy-eared dogs or dogs with a lot of hair on their ears. It tends to kind of like hold those ears down, doesn't let air circulate in there and keep the ears nice and dry. And I haven't struggled with this a whole lot, only because, honestly, I think it's because I feed a raw diet. I think that makes all the difference in the world. But I did want to relay a story about a dog that I acquired kind of on accident. It was more of a rescue. So I had sold a puppy back when I used to raise Brazilian Mastiffs. I sold a puppy to a lady and she had her for, I think, 4 years, really good home. I got, she contacted me fairly often and told me how the puppy was doing and how she was growing. And then the lady broke her back and she asked if I could come and get the dog and fly her back home and take her back again and either rehome her or, do something with her. So of course, because it was my puppy, I agreed. Then she said to me, "Hey, I've got this other dog, another Fila. Can you take him too? I can't deal with either one of them. My medical procedures and stuff. I live by myself, understood." So I said, "Sure, I'll take him." I hadn't even seen him, didn't know anything about him. But I figured, I could find him a home maybe if I needed to. So flew out there. These are big dogs. So they had to go in 700 very kennels. They couldn't fly out of the airport that I flew into because the crates were bigger than any of the airplanes that were, at that particular airport. We had to drive down to Atlanta. And of course, these are not friendly dogs. I could not touch them. They couldn't be pet or handled at all. I couldn't get them out of the crate until we got them home. And so we made a mad dash from her house in South Carolina, drove down to Atlanta, boarded the first flight that we were able to get that they could fit on the plane, flew back home to Seattle, loaded them in the back of a truck, and brought them home. And got the mail out, and he came with both of them came with like little bags she sent. Here's the stuff that, their stuff. I didn't know what was in it. I didn't really look. Well, it turns out the mail came home with a prescription for Cipro, which is a pretty hardcore antibiotic, and it was for his ears. He had eardrops that were supposed to be given to him. He didn't look real great. He was very thin. He had a lot of gunk in his eyes. He had a big mushy face anyway. His face he looked like a little bit like a bloodhound. But anyway, and he stunk. Oh, he smelled so bad. And it was just awful. So we get him home, and I finally managed to get him out of the crate. A little scary, but got him out of the crate, kind of got around, was able to finally the next day, kind of look at him and barely touch him. And after a few days, I realized what his problem was, is he had severely infected ears. They were absolutely awful. It was awful. I've never seen anything like it. It was so bad that both ears, when I was finally able to touch him and move his ears around and stuff, both ears, when you lifted it up, there was pus caking the ear leather. It was running out of the ear, down the side of the dog's face, onto his dewlap, and all the way down to his front legs. And it had actually burned all the hair off of both sides. So he had shiny, greasy looking skin, and he smelled like death. It was absolutely horrible. And so I realized then, well, that's what the Cipro's for. So my idea, she had told me, I had asked her about it, and she had told me that he had been on all sorts of antibiotics. Cipro was the last case, and then after that, she thought she might have to put him to sleep because there was no other options. So I switched him to a raw diet. I put the Cipro in a cupboard, didn't use it on him. I never did give him any of it. And I started just gently rinsing his ears with like a lukewarm water until I could kind of clear some of the gunk off of him and see what I was dealing with. So the ear canal was absolutely gone. There was no ear canal. There was so much inflammation in the ear that there was no hole at all. The dog was deaf, turns out. He ended up being deaf, never regained his hearing. But so I started by just rinsing that area. I went to a colloidal silver, and if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend looking into it. It's like nano silver particles, like in a water solution, and what it does is it's super good for healthy tissue, and it's really good at getting rid of unhealthy things like germs and bacteria, virus, fungus. Anyway, so I ordered the ways to make your own homemade colloidal silver machine, which is a pretty lame little deal, but hey, it worked. And okay, here is my homemade colloidal silver machine, and I made this myself. It wasn't a whole lot of money or anything, and I'm not gonna do everything exactly perfect because I don't want to measure everything, but generally speaking, I have a glass of water, I have my 2 silver, I call them rods, but they're really flat pieces of silver. and that's pure, pretty much pure silver. I had to special order that. And then I have 3 9-volt batteries all connected together. And back in the day, I just went to Radio Shack and bought all this stuff. And you know, it's pretty simple, pretty basic. You're just connecting all these 3 power sources so that there's a negative and a positive. And then a little bit of kosher salt. So the way we do this is we add some salt. Like I said, I'm not measuring this, so this isn't an exact science, but I found that it's not that important, especially when you're using it topically. So put that in there, not a whole lot. And then we're going to stir that, and ideally you're going to start with a plastic utensil, but all I have right now is a fork. So we're just increasing the salinity of the water, is basically what's happening. And that helps to pull the molecules, I guess, I don't know, ions, colloids, I don't know, off of the silver rods here. Now I've got these set up so they have this little hook. I'm just going to hang those on the edge of the cup like that, and I don't want them touching. I want them just kind of flat against the glass as much as possible. Now I'm going to go ahead and hook up my electricity source here like this. Now watch the rods when I hook up the red one. So that's just the negative one, it doesn't really do anything. But when I hook up the red one, oops, like I said, I don't want them touching. Now, you see the bubbles coming off of that? The way I understand it, and I did this research 30 years ago, so I don't exactly remember all the exacts, but it's pulling off itty bitty fragments of silver and it's depositing them into the water. And so what I'm going to do is leave this running not very long. You kind of want it just to get kind of a milky look to it. Super strong, I don't think makes it any better than, you know, just sort of average strong. And then when I come back, it'll be ready to actually use, and I would use this topically. I know that, you know, some people will drink it and, you know, that kind of thing, but, you know, for an ear infection, this stuff is just amazing. It can't be beat. All right, that's gonna be about all I want to do. I kind of go just by the look, the color of the water, not so much anything else. All right, we're gonna pull this out. See, it's got some, it's not super pure because I didn't measure the salt, and I'm just using a kosher salt here, but, and that wipes off. Like I said, I wouldn't probably ingest this. I've made some where you can ingest it, but I didn't measure anything. But this, I would feel completely safe putting into any wound, you know, superficial wound or ear infection. And that's pretty much it. You want it to just look kind of like it's got a little bit of milk in there, kind of milky looking. It worked, and I started flushing the outside of the ear with this colloidal silver several times a day. And in the meantime, he became a little more robust. I think the raw diet was really helping him. I got to where there was in each ear tiny little hole where the inflammation was starting to go away. Now I could kind of get the colloidal silver down in there. Well, once that little hole started and I was able to actually introduce the colloidal silver down into his ear canal, his recovery was incredible. It happened so fast and so complete that within, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks of me getting him, that all the hair had grown back on his chest or was coming in, you know, it wasn't wet anymore and smeary and slimy. The ear canal had opened up enough that I could, you know, twice a day flush that out. And I used like a little feeding tube, a little catheter, and I would just put the colloidal silver in a syringe, set that just down into the ear where I could see it, not jamming it down in his ear. And I would just really gently flush it. And he came to where he actually enjoyed it. It must have felt good. The ears, you know, they never looked normal again. It looked kind of like he had a, you know, like a chemical burn. But they opened up enough that the infection was gone. He never got another infection. He never had antibiotics again in his life. And he never could hear again, unfortunately. I mean, his eardrums, I think, were damaged beyond repair. But he was a happy dog, and he lived with me for another 1.5 years before cancer took him out. And I just love that dog. I admired him for how stoic he was under such conditions of just painful horror. And he never once really yelped or whined, or he never snapped at me. He never growled at me. He was just a beautiful creature and one of my favorite of all time dogs. Anyway, but I highly recommend those of you that are struggling with ear infections in your dogs to look into the raw diet, first of all. Seriously, look into the raw diet. It makes all the difference in the world. And then maybe look into colloidal silver. It really did work for my dog. Now, maybe whatever cootie was in his ear was, you know, more susceptible to it than whatever might be going on with your dog. But if not, it made so much wonder. And I'll tell you what, I took that dog to a dog show maybe a year later, and he took reserve best in show. He did really well. He was a very beautiful dog. All his condition had come back, his happiness in life had come back, and he did great. So, you know, there's hope. Don't give up. But sometimes natural ways work just as good, if not better, than, you know, antibiotics and things like that.